It's 8 p.m. You're looking at a desk full of unfinished paperwork, feeling that familiar sense of self-blame for what you didn't get done today. This usually triggers a cycle of guilt. You think back to the optimism you felt at 8 a.m. and assume your failure to follow through is just a lack of drive, that you just need to work longer and push harder. While sheer effort might get you into the top 10% of performers, the top 1% operate differently. They don't rely on raw discipline to grind through their tasks. They engineer systems that remove the need for willpower entirely. Science shows that this evening exhaustion is a hardwired biological limitation of the human brain. By the end of the day, your cognitive resources are physically spent, making focus an uphill battle against your own neurology. Relying on a resource as unstable as discipline is a strategy destined to fail. To achieve consistent results, we have to move past the struggle of trying harder and start looking at architectural solutions. The evidence for this biological limit comes from a study by Roy Baumeister. He placed two groups of people in a room with a plate of fresh-baked cookies. Group A could eat them, but Group B was forced to sit there and only smell them. Afterward, both groups were given a series of impossible geometry puzzles. Conventional wisdom suggests the group that showed the discipline to resist the cookies would be more focused on the puzzles. In reality, that group gave up 50% faster. This represents Baumeister's key finding. Willpower behaves exactly like a biological fuel tank. It is a finite resource that drains with every act of self-control. Every distraction you fight off and every micro-decision you make pulls a measurable amount of energy from this tank. By the time 8 p.m. rolls around, your brain is running on fumes. To get hard things done consistently, we have to stop asking the brain to use fuel it doesn't have and start building systems that run on autopilot. The most effective way to bypass your biology is to use a forcing function. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived in Mexico with a small force to face the massive Aztec Empire. The odds were stacked against them, and the temptation to retreat was high. To ensure his men had no choice but to win, Cortés gave the order to sink his own ships. He intentionally removed the possibility of a plan B, leaving only two options: victory or death. You can apply this same logic by creating your own structural traps. Make a public commitment, place a high financial stake, or use strict website blockers to cut off your own access to distractions. When you structurally remove the option to retreat, your cognitive priorities shift. By eliminating the escape hatch, you focus every available mental resource on the only remaining path, making Plan A work. The second layer of this architecture is behavioral design, programming your actions like a piece of code. Olympic sprinter Noah Lyles doesn't wait for motivation to strike before a race. He uses a rigid internal rhythm, the same track, the same playlist, and the same warm-up to put his body into a state of autopilot. This chart shows how powerful this if-then logic is. In a study on exercise habits, standard goal setters failed 62% of the time, but students who used a simple if-then algorithm failed only 9% of the time. These if-then plans strip the emotional bargaining out of your day. You stop debating whether you feel like working and simply execute the pre-written code. But as your goals become more complex, the number of moving parts can overwhelm your brain. This is where you need to outsource your decisions. Surgeon Atul Gawande discovered that even world-class experts make preventable mistakes when their cognitive load peaks. It wasn't a lack of skill. Their brains simply reached their processing limit under pressure. When hospitals implemented a simple 19-step checklist for surgeries, post-surgical deaths plummeted by 47%. Checklists provide a cognitive safety net. They offload the burden of memory to a system, freeing your brain to focus all its energy on the difficult execution of the task itself. After practicing these forcing functions and algorithms thousands of times, something happens within your biology. Harvard researchers studying Tibetan monks found that during deep meditation, their brainwaves synchronized perfectly in rhythm. These monks weren't burning willpower to stay focused. Their nervous systems had physically evolved through thousands of hours of repetition to maintain that state effortlessly. This suggests a shift in how habits actually form. Repeated action changes the brain's wiring until it stops chasing an external reward and begins to physically crave the repetition itself. Motivation doesn't drive the repetition. The repetition drives the motivation. Stop relying on the fleeting willpower of your 8 p.m. self. Pick one simple if-then rule and design it today. If you focus on building the right systems, those systems will eventually build the right version of you.